Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with my Winter Book Rec Bonanza video. In case you guys didn't hear about this, this is sort of a Secret Santa gift exchange, except the gifts that we are exchanging are book recommendations. And I was matched up with Sasha from Well Read and Half Dead. I love your channel name, by the way, so Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and I hope you find some new books to love. And the things Sasha put on her list that I am working from is Adult and YA, Contemporary Historical Fiction, Romance, LGBT, Enemies to Lovers, books about bands, found families, and gay stuff, in all caps. That's what I was working from when I was trying to come up with recommendations, so let's get into them. The first recommendation I have is The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed. This is a really hard-hitting contemporary, and we follow three main characters. A while ago in their town, a girl who used to go to their school was raped, and because he's very popular, and I think his father is also very well known in the town, it was hushed up and nobody believed her, and they basically ran her out of town. And then our three main characters end up banding together and sort of become unlikely friends, and they start fighting back against the sexism and rape culture in their school, and they especially start trying to figure out a way that they can help this girl. And this checks off several of your boxes. We have found families here because these three girls really come to rely on each other and care about each other, and they start forming other friendships and other relationships with the other girls at their school too. We also have some queer characters and queer themes. One of the three protagonists is Latinx and a lesbian, and her relationship with another girl is just really, really sweet and lovely, and it's a nice bright spot in the midst of all this kind of heavy stuff. And I also thought of this book for you because I noticed that one of the three favorite books that you listed was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and I have not read that book, but I know a little bit about it, and it kind of sounds similar in the themes and in kind of a, like, getting justice for a girl who has been sexually assaulted. I think The Nowhere Girls handles it in a different way from what I have heard, but I highly recommend this book. I'm also going to list all of the content warnings I can remember for these various books that I talk about because some of them, like I said, deal with very heavy topics. My next recommendation is the only one that I actually have a copy of the book accessible to me, even though I own most of these, and that is Blanca Roja by Anna Marie McLemore. Now honestly, I just have a pretty much blanket recommendation for all of McLemore's books, but I especially wanted to recommend this one. I remember in one of the videos that you linked, you talked about really enjoying a kind of magical realism style, and this is a magical realism book, and you specifically mentioned like really lovely kind of fairy tale feeling writing, which is I think something that McLemore always does really well, and not in a way that detracts from the story. This is another book that has LGBT plus characters and themes. At least one of our main characters is queer, and her love interest uses alternating pronouns, and there's a lot of discussion about that character's identity, and it's just explored in a really beautiful way. And then the other main romantic relationship is one that I would definitely consider antagonists to lovers, because they don't hate each other, but they really rub each other the wrong way for a good part of the book. And then seeing them get to know each other and help each other and really be there for each other is just a really wonderful part of this book. I just think McLemore does an amazing job with relationships overall, family and friends and romantic, and every kind of relationship I feel like is given importance. And I realize I haven't actually summarized what this book is about. This is a sort of fairy tale retelling or inspired story from the fairy tale Snow White and Rose Red, and also with a little bit of Swan Lake. And this is, I think, my favorite of McLemore's books so far, even though it's hard to pick one. And we follow our two main characters, Blanca Roja, and they are sisters, and their family has always been cursed, so that every generation there are two daughters born, and one of them is cursed to turn into a swan forever. This is about how they try and break the curse or try and run from it, and what happens from there. And there's also a lot of really great discussion about cultural identity and colorism and racism, and how people perceive Latinx people, especially women, and I just think this book does so many things so well, and it's also just a really beautiful story. Next, I have a romance series, and I think this falls somewhere between new adult and adult. I don't read a ton of romance, so this one I'm not exactly sure how it would be categorized, but I'm talking about the Foolish Kingdom series by Natalia Jaster. The first book is Trick, and it is a hate-to-love romance between a princess of a kingdom and a court jester. So it's about them getting to know each other and falling in love, but beyond that, it's also about this kingdom and this series of four kingdoms. There's kind of this overarching plot throughout the series of healing the things that have gone wrong in these kingdoms and the way that some of them treat people. There's especially a really strong element about disabled people or neurodivergent people and how those are treated in the various kingdoms, and seeing our main characters really work to change that and work to fight back about that. And that's one of my favorite parts of the series so far, is seeing how the relationships are obviously important, but it's also about like the bigger picture of trying to fix this kingdom and working towards greater justice for people. So the first book, Trick, is definitely an antagonist to lovers or enemies to lovers romance. And Poet, one of the main characters who is the court jester, he is also queer. I believe the book says that he's bisexual. And then the second book in the series, Dare, is definitely enemies to lovers. And this is, I think, one of the best developed enemies to lovers relationships I have seen. Like, they truly are enemies at the beginning of the book, and then seeing them have to work together to survive on this island and everything is just really, really interesting. I think the character development was done really well. It does take a while to get there. Like, it's not an easy journey for the two main characters, especially for the prince character. He has a lot of growing and changing to do, and I don't feel like that was rushed, so I feel like this is a great example of enemies to lovers romance done well. So far I've only read those first two books in the series, but I have really enjoyed both of them, and I think you would too. Next I have one of my favorite underhyped books, and that is Still Star-Crossed by Melinda Taub. This is a standalone historical fiction that is sort of set after the events of Romeo and Juliet, and one of the things that I think is most impressive about this retelling or kind of inspiration is that no matter how you feel about Romeo and Juliet, I feel like you could really enjoy this book. Because Romeo and Juliet was never my favorite Shakespeare play, but this book made me love it even more. It made me see the events of the play in a new way and appreciate characters in a new way. I just always think it's very impressive when a book can take the source material and make it something that people could enjoy even if they don't love the original. And another reason I'm recommending this one is I think you mentioned that you participate in the Shakespeare reading club or book club or something, so I think you have some appreciation for Shakespeare as well, so I think you might enjoy this one. And this is a really wonderful enemies to lovers because the plot of this book is that after the tragic events of Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets and the Montagues are still fighting. Things haven't gotten any better, and the Prince of Verona decides that he's going to try again to fix things. So he arranges a marriage between Benvolio, who is from the Montague side of the family, and Rosaline, who was Romeo's first love, who is from the Capulet family. And of course neither of them are happy about this, but they're starting to suspect that somebody is sabotaging the attempts of the prince to make peace. So they kind of strike a deal because neither of them wants to end up married to the other one. They're going to help each other investigate, and at the end of it, the reward is that neither of them will have to get married to this person that they despise. And of course things kind of develop from there. And I just really, really love this book. I think it's a really great balance of the romantic relationship and the mystery, and also other relationships too. Like there are some really wonderful family relationships, like Rosaline's relationship with her sister is just really beautifully done, I think. And I also think the writing of this book is excellent. It has that kind of Shakespeare flavor without feeling like it's trying too hard and without feeling off-putting for people who don't read as much Shakespeare. I think there's just enough inspiration from Shakespeare's style to make it feel period appropriate and not be distracting, but it's not so over the top that I think it's off-putting to readers. And that leads me to one more sort of Shakespeare adjacent recommendation. That is An Assassin's Guide to Love and Treason by Virginia Baker. So this book is actually set during the time of Shakespeare, and this is during the time in English history when the hatred and violence between Protestants and Catholics was at its peak. So one of our main characters is Catherine, and her father is actually killed in a raid, and as revenge she decides to start helping this rebel group in order to overthrow the queen and kind of avenge her father's death. And our other main character is Toby, and he is a spy for the opposite side. And both of them end up working in the same play that Shakespeare is directing, and it is his production of Twelfth Night. And Catherine has to disguise herself as a boy in order to be a part of this play, and it's part of their plan for how they're going to overthrow the queen. And then their relationship is definitely enemies to lovers because they are on two very different sides of a conflict, and seeing them work together on this play and get to know each other is just really enjoyable. And I also really like that this book has very believable stakes. Like I feel like you can really feel how scared Catherine is she could be found out at any moment and what that means for her. I just feel like this book did a really great job of balancing the fun kind of hijinks of the plot with the more serious background of what's going on and what these people are risking. Also, Toby, the male lead, is bisexual, and so we see how he relates to his identity and how that affects the way he interacts with the world. And I just think all of that was handled in a really thoughtful and interesting way. This is another underhyped book that I think is really wonderful and that I hope you would enjoy. Okay, just a couple more. We have The Girl with the Red Balloon by Catherine Locke, and this is another historical fiction book, and this one, it kind of mixes a lot of different genres. And one of the reasons I recommended this for you, Sasha, is because one of your other books that you mentioned is Jane Unlimited by Kristen Kishore, and that one has a very interesting blend of genres and kind of unusual structure too. I haven't read it yet, but I know a little bit about it. So that's one of the reasons I recommended this one, is because it is historical fiction, but there's a few different time periods that we see, and there's also some elements of almost fantasy or science fiction because there is some time travel. And we follow our main character Ellie, and one day she's on a field trip to see the Berlin Wall when she gets transported back in time to the years when the Berlin Wall was actually still up. And this is a period in historical fiction I feel like we don't see a lot. And throughout the book we see her kind of struggling to adapt and wondering if she's ever going to get home, and the people and allies she kind of meets along the way. And we also see glimpses of another character who's living in one of the Jewish ghettos and then a concentration camp during World War II. So this is another book that deals with some really, really serious, heavy content. I just think this book was so well written and so thoughtful. I really, really grew to love the characters. This is another great book for found families because seeing Ellie get to know the people who are in charge of these magical balloons, which is the reason she got transported back in time, seeing her get to know these people and work with them and become friends with them and really become bonded with them in this place that she doesn't know that isn't her home. It's just really touching. There's also a romantic subplot between her and this boy Kai, who is a Romani boy, and I think that was really well done as well. The way he is introduced, he seems like he's going to be a very stereotypical bad boy, and he's really like so much more than that, so I think his character was developed in a really interesting way. And one of the side characters is a girl named Mitzi, who was just one of my favorites. She is really, really fun, and seeing her make friends with Ellie was one of my favorite parts of the book. And Mitzi is also a lesbian, I believe, and so seeing how she navigates that in this very restrictive setting was also, I think, really interesting. And I haven't read the companion book in this series yet, but I believe that one also has queer rep with the main characters. And finally, last but not least, I have another contemporary, and that is Noteworthy by Riley Redgate. In this book, we follow our main character Jordan Sun, and she goes to a performing arts school, and she doesn't get into a very prestigious girls choir, so she decides that she's going to dress up as a boy and try out for a very prestigious boys choir, and she actually makes it. I just realized that there are 2 books on this list that involve a girl dressing up as a boy in order to audition for something, so I don't know if that's something that you are specifically interested in, but hopefully it's not something you dislike particularly. So anyway, Jordan makes it into this group, and the rest of the book is about her making friends with these guys and struggling with if she's ever going to tell them that she's actually a girl, because she starts getting to know them so well and having such a meaningful connection with these guys. And the longer it goes on, the more she's worried that they wouldn't accept her if she actually told them that she had lied to them and that she's actually a girl, she's not the person they thought she was. And I think this book was so thoughtfully handled. I think it's the only time I've ever read a cross-dressing subplot where there is explicit reference to the fact that what the main character is doing is not even close to what trans people have to go through on a day-to-day basis. Like, there are several scenes where Jordan realizes and acknowledges how different it is for her to dress up as another gender and then come back and take it off and be fine and go about her life. I just really like that that was specifically addressed, because again, I don't think I've ever seen that. And Jordan herself is also bisexual, and it's not the biggest part of the plot. Like, she already knows that she is, or she's pretty sure that she is at the beginning of the book. So it's not like a coming to realize her own identity necessarily, but she does think about how her cross-dressing like affects her identity, if it does affect her identity or sexuality at all. And I just think all of that part of the book was handled in a really thoughtful way. And this is another one where that was balanced with a lot of really fun moments as well, and some really, really wonderful friendships and relationships. This is another book that I think the found families vibe comes through a lot in, because seeing her get to know these guys, even some of the ones who initially weren't my favorite characters, like, I grew so attached to them. This was a book that really, really blew me away, and I know it's not exactly a book about a band, but I don't actually read a lot of books about bands, so this was the closest I could get. So I hope that you do enjoy this if you pick this up. Okay, so those are the book recommendations I have. Sasha, I hope that you found some new books that you're excited about, and if you do try any of them, I hope that you enjoy them. And if anybody else sees this, I hope that whatever your reading tastes are, you were able to find something that interests you. These are all books that I really love and that I think are really, really well done books. So I think whether or not you are interested in the particular things on Sasha's list, I think there might be a couple of books you could enjoy from this one as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!